Okay, just giving it a second as folks are coming in. All right. Hi, everybody. I'm Lindsey Wallace. I'm the Director of Strategic Projects and Design Services at Main Street America, also known as National Main Street Center. I'm going to share a bit with you about our disaster preparedness program. I'm going to share my screen, have a few slides. All right. If you have questions, feel free to put them in the chat. There'll be time at the end of my piece for questions too, so feel free to ask them. So Main Street America is working with the National Park Service on the Main Street Community Disaster Preparedness and Resilience Program. It's a mouthful, but I want to make sure all of those pieces are, of course, elevated and included in that. So just with my slides, I'm going to give a quick, introduction, an overview about Main Street America and our network, because I'm not sure, some of you may be really familiar with our program, some of you may not, so just wanted to give you a little primer on that. And then go through what we're doing with our program. It's a 3-year program that we're really excited and lucky to be doing, so I'll give you some details on that, and then we'll have some time for Q&A at the end. So just about our network and our organization. We started in 1980 as a program of the National Trust for Historic Preservation. We spun off in 2013 as our own wholly owned subsidiary. And essentially, we focus on comprehensive place-based economic development in historic and older commercial districts across the country. So we have a network of about 1,000, more than that now, local affiliate organizations and 45 state, city, and county level, what we call coordinating programs. And all of these programs kind of work together in this network to support the revitalization and the sustainable economic development in small towns and mid-sized communities and in urban commercial districts. We have roughly 70% of our network is located in rural places, so populations of lower than 100,000. And we work, again, in about 45 states. So we're really about working with that local economic development organization to equip local leaders and residents with a practical framework for improving the quality of life. So we're about that long-term comprehensive approach, partners, multiple stakeholders involved in that work. And we're really focused on, making that economic development place-based. So the sustainability of that economic development is rooted in that kind of grassroots approach and rooted in the unique assets of the community that make it special and attractive to residents, visitors, and businesses. So our comprehensive approach, you might have heard of it, it's also referred to as a 4-point approach, but it's about the combination of 4 points, right? Economic vitality, which is pretty straightforward, so looking at building that diverse economic base, catalyzing new investment, and cultivating a strong entrepreneurship ecosystem. We're seeing, of course, that local entrepreneurship, developing local entrepreneurs is a crucial piece in COVID-19 response, but it's also, one of the biggest employers in the country. I think people don't realize that local entrepreneurship and cultivating local entrepreneurs is a huge job maker, actually. Design, which is the point that's focused on the physical environment. So, traditionally we are focused on historic buildings, and that's a major cornerstone of this work, but we also look at quality design with streetscapes, transit, transportation, and public spaces. So making sure that public spaces are not only well designed, but they're accessible to everyone. The design approach is people-centered rather than building-centered. Design is a major piece of that. With organization, we focus on building leadership and strong organizational capacity. So working with those local organizations to make sure that their staff is supported, that the board is connected to the work if the organization has a board. And also, helping that local organization work on community engagement strategies, so making sure that community engagement is a major piece of that economic development work. And of course, encouraging the forging of partnerships across sectors, because comprehensive work doesn't happen without multiple stakeholders. That's a crucial piece too. And then the 4th point is around promotion. So this is really about elevating those unique assets, storytelling about what makes your community special, supporting that buy local experience. So it's when these 4 points come together that we really see that sustainable community transformation and economic development. So that's kind of how we approach that work. So connected to disaster preparedness, you know, natural disasters affect not only the buildings in these commercial districts, but of course affect community members, residents, the local economy, health, and culture. So disasters really have these myriad effects, right? But when faced with disaster mitigation and response, you know, many local leaders don't have a plan to follow or roles and responsibilities identified, because there are going to be multiple stakeholders that will be addressing these kind of myriad impacts from disasters. So there is a strong need for this preparedness and resilience planning at the Main Street organization level. In many disaster preparedness resources, there are a lot of really wonderful disaster preparedness resources out there, and a lot of them focus specifically on the built environment, which of course is a crucial piece of our work, crucial piece of disaster preparedness. But what we wanted to look at with our program here is to develop a more comprehensive resource that addresses various disaster types, addresses the myriad effects, both the built environment and then all of the other sort of social and economic impacts as well, because that's how our Main Street work works, and so that's how we wanted to approach our disaster preparedness program. So the funding for this program comes from the emergency supplemental funding to the Historic Preservation Fund, which is an allocation for hurricanes Harvey, Irma, and Maria. Harvey is pictured there hitting the coast of Texas, and hurricanes Florence and Michael and Typhoon U2. So with those you know, specific allocations come geographic focus. So FEMA had issued major disaster declarations for these states: Alabama, Florida, Georgia, Louisiana, North Carolina, the Commonwealth of the Northern Mariana Islands, way on the west, Puerto Rico, South Carolina, Texas, Virginia, and the U.S. Virgin Islands. So while these you know, specific funds focus on these specific areas, so we'll be doing, you know, kind of state-specific case studies and that sort of thing. But the idea is, while these are focus areas, this work will be useful for our whole network. This is a really you know, national approach to this disaster preparedness program development. Subject areas that we're looking at. So of course, we're looking at hurricanes, typhoons, fires, floods. Floods and fires are major, majorly impactful in commercial districts in particular. Tornadoes, earthquakes, but we were also able to expand the subject areas to include pandemics. You know, when we first developed this task agreement with the Park Service, pandemics weren't really at the top of our list, but of course, you know, fast forward 6 months later, and we're all dealing with COVID-19 response, which is of course top of mind for many of our commercial district leaders. So the Park Service was willing to work with us to expand to include pandemics, which I think will be a crucial element to this work. Who's working on it? I mean, you see me here, but I'm just one of a project team. So we are working with a lead consultant, Manuel Ochoa, who has decades of experience working in disaster recovery and response. And so he's helping us kind of develop this program and really taking the lead in a lot of the program development. Hannah Mira Friedland, who is my colleague at Main Street America, is also you know, one of the key project team members. I wanted to show you their pictures in case you wanted to reach out to us. These are the people that are kind of heading it up. We also have, you know, multiple staff that will be involved. As I mentioned, this will be a 3-year program, so there'll be a lot of touch points, not only with our staff, but our various stakeholders as well. As part of this work, we did develop an external advisory committee, because for us in this comprehensive approach, we know that even though we have some expertise on staff, and certainly Manuel brings a wealth of expertise to this work, we you know, need a lot of input and advice. There's so much great work that's happening out there that we wanted to make sure that we have some representation from different organizations across the country. And of course, that geographic representation, we wanted to make sure that we had representation from the focus area states, and certainly from folks who have a lot of experience, unfortunately, firsthand with this disaster preparedness and resilience. So just a quick shout out to our external advisory committee. It's a really great group. We kicked everything off earlier this summer, and we're thrilled to have such a great group kind of advising us on this. So our deliverables, as I mentioned, this will be a 3-year program, which we're excited to have that room and that space, because key to this program will really be assessing and researching what resources are out there and really becoming like a clearinghouse to our network for all of the great work that's out there, but also developing new work based on, you know, what we find in research. So our beginning work is holding these national workshops / listening sessions. The first 3 will be virtual. So we just had our first one yesterday, actually, and it's really wonderful. We had about 40 participants, an all-day virtual workshop. People hung in there with us. We had a lot of time for sharing, to hear what everybody had to say about their own experiences, what they were seeing as kind of the top threats, but also kind of the top tips to keep in mind for, you know, Main Street response to disasters. So it was great. A lot of learning to pull from that. We will be having another workshop in conjunction with the National Trust for Historic Preservation's Path Forward Conference in late October. That's going to take a slightly different shape than our first virtual conference, in that it'll likely be much larger and probably have more breakouts based on time zone, because we want to make sure that our colleagues in Guam have a chance to participate. So we're going to be trying to be a little innovative in our design for that. And then we'll have a 3rd workshop in early 2021. The shape of that was a little bit TBD, but all of these are meant to inform each other, as well as inform the development of our major kind of centerpiece of this program, is this toolkit that we'll be developing, which is not only going to be a digital handbook, but also an online resource library, which will live on our website as kind of a live resource that will link to various wonderful resources other people have already put together. It'll reference, pieces that we researched and highlighted in our handbook. It'll also, we'll be developing these 2-page community profiles, so developing some case studies that are, kind of serve as pullouts for folks to take as examples. We'll also, as a part of that toolkit, be developing a tool for preparedness assessment and planning, like an evaluation tool and checklist. That'll be also kind of serve as a pullout to for communities to use as a sort of handy worksheet. Following that toolkit, we plan on holding regional workshops or technical assistance and some webinars based on research in the toolkit, based on what we find in the workshops, the national workshops toolkit, and then kind of taking it on the road to do some technical assistance focused on this disaster preparedness and resilience. And we're also going to be looking at developing looking at a needs assessment and feasibility study for a calculator tool for determining disaster preparedness and resilience. That one is a little bit more of an R&D piece that will, again, be informed by the other work that precedes it. So I'm going to stop sharing. As I mentioned, we're early on in our launch of this program, so some of this is a bit TBD on our end. I mean, obviously, we have some things planned out, but we really are looking at this as one piece informing the next, so that we have a lot of input from stakeholders across the country. So yeah, I'm open if anybody has any questions. Happy to answer anything anybody might have. Covered it all. Not a problem.
Just as a matter of logistics, y'all, we're in webinar mode, so if you can put your questions in the Q&A, and we can let Lindsay know what those are. And I know we did talk yesterday about Main Street a little bit. So now would be a good time if you have other questions about Main Street. We have the expert here. I know we had a little bit of discussion about how some states, the Main Street in their state preservation office, so they will have a very close relationship, but with other states, they're more in like an economic development type of spot, and it's a little harder to have that kind of cross pollination. So if you had any, we'd be happy to hear about those too.
Oh yeah, did you say, sorry, it cut off a little bit, if I had insights on that?
Yeah, just sometimes it's where have you seen things work well between like the certified local program and the Main Street programs? Are there good examples to look at, or how do you facilitate that communication, if you had any thoughts on that?
Yeah. Well, I mean, as you mentioned, like when the Main Street program is housed in the Shippo, that tends to be like the easiest, right? But, you know, we've seen collaboration with the local governments connected to like facade improvement. Like we're also, as Megan knows, we're working on a facade improvement program with the National Park Service too. And we're seeing, you know, some folks leveraging CLG grants as match for this program, or, you know, not even just for this program, but yet having developed, you know, different facade improvement monies and grants based on that CLG allocation. We've also talked a lot yesterday about CLG grants and funding being used in disaster preparedness. So connecting the dots with like what could, you know, the myriad things that the CLG program could intersect with, both with facade improvements, downtown development, economic development, and this disaster preparedness. So, you know, as I mentioned, like the kind of the strongest correlation is when the Main Street program is located in the Shippo, but some of the more, I wouldn't say more interesting, but maybe more innovative approaches to that connection sometimes happen when you have the Main Street organization located in the different state agencies, because it's crucial for the Main Street work to have that kind of multiple partner stakeholder engagement and connection. And so when you have like, you know, your Main Street organization located in the Department of Commerce, et cetera, that kind of creates and forces, but in a good way, opportunities to connect with different state agencies. And I think we just had, hi, Ray. Ray Scriber is the Louisiana Main Street coordinator, and he's wonderful and awesome. But he states here that Louisiana requires that all of its Main Street communities must first be CLG before they can apply for Main Street designation. So thanks for that, Ray. I mean, that's you know, differs state by state, and I know you know, Louisiana has a particularly strong program and strong Main Street communities, and I think that's, you know, partially because they have that CLG requirement. We see that from time to time, but I'm always surprised by the communities that don't know about that designation and that opportunity. So that's something we do try to highlight for them, that if they're not already a part of that. But Ray, I really like that example. I think that's a good kind of best practice.
We had a
that we should
question
encourage.
from Shay Oatley, I'm saying that correctly. In Oklahoma, we have one CLG who has had an incredible collaboration between them and their Main Street. How can the Shippo help other CLG communities build those collaborations?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think it goes both ways, really, that I think both our statewide coordinating programs, if they're not located in the Shippo, should, and they do often, connect with the Shippo and develop good relationships, so that connection can facilitate those conversations at the local level too. And for many of the Main Street coordinating programs, you know, they do kind of advocate for that designation and that connection. But I think that's the key piece, really, is for the Shippo and the Main Street coordinating program to work together. And again, not all coordinating programs are in state agencies either. We have a few statewide nonprofits, like the Missouri Main Street Connection is one example. They're a really great Main Street organization, but they're a nonprofit. And so that they, you know, it's another opportunity for that cross-sector work. And I think they do work pretty closely with their Shippo there. But that's kind of the first line, I would say, is that state level connection to then better connect the Shippo to the local organizations that are Main Street organizations. Yeah. That connection just one more thing. That connection not only helps that, you know, to elevate that CLG conversation, but also to talk more about historic preservation commissions at the local level and advocate for design guidelines and that sort of thing. The more the Shippo and the Main Street coordinator can connect on that, the more that kind of like preservation work can get elevated at the local level. Sorry, John, I'm ready for the next one.
No worries. We had another question from Curry Gill. This disaster work is exciting and timely for some things we are doing in Oregon. Are you connecting with the state level planning or disaster agencies on this?
That's the plan. That's a great question. Right now, we've connected with our Main Street coordinating programs, but we're I mean, we've connected with a bunch of stakeholders, but that's the plan. I think like our next phase after this first workshop is to get lists of stakeholders to engage both in our workshops and in the research that we'll be doing for the toolkits. So yeah, I mean, it's the plan for this program, but I think also to kind of help connect our state coordinating programs more, or offer up like another opportunity for that connection at the state level with the planning agencies and disaster preparedness agencies. My guess in Oregon specifically is that the Oregon Main Street program is probably pretty connected already. She was on our, Sherry Stewart, who's the coordinator there, was on in our workshop yesterday discussing the fires and the impact there. Just, pretty daunting stuff, but I think kind of their first line of defense is reaching out to them. So we'll be relying on our network partners and our kind of external partners to make sure that our list of stakeholders includes all of those folks. It's a great question.
Great. We had one more from someone else. In our region, we're seeing a lot of Main Street programs diverging from historic preservation principles in favor of creating Disney-fied Main Streets with a cohesive look and feel. Is National Main Street policy trending this way, or is this a regional phenomenon? Main Street programs are often better funded than preservation programs, so it's hard to push back on this, but we want to work together while protecting our historic Main Streets.
Yeah, right on. So answer to the first question, no, that's not how our national organization's trending. I would say that's more of a local phenomenon. I'd be curious to talk to you offline about which region, but no, you know, we're really focused on preservation practice in you know, that's in compliance with the SLIS. And, you know, I personally have a background in preservation planning, historic preservation planning. And so my work at the center really revolves around design services and design work. And by design, I mean like proper historic preservation practice as it connects also to streetscapes and other sort of design elements. So, you know, the way that we advocate for preservation is not the Disney-fied piece, it's the place-based piece, it's the compliance with the standards. But I mean, your point is really smart too, that the working together is a major piece. So part of our work in advocating for that kind of proper preservation practice is working with preservation stakeholders at the local level to make sure that everything's in line with each other. Like for instance, with this facade improvement program that we're working with the Park Service on, we require that all like preservation stakeholders, the local preservation commissions, even the ones that are kind of ad hoc and not formal, have an opportunity to review the facade improvement projects, not only to make sure that everybody's on the same page, but also to kind of facilitate that relationship connection. So I think that it's a great point, because it's not just about the design standards, it's about connecting those stakeholders so they can see where each other is coming from. But that's a big part of what we advocate for at the national level. Thanks for that question.
Any other questions, anyone? Okay.
Yeah, well, I mean, feel free to reach out to me. I think my email is floating around, and I'm happy to talk further about any of this, but I appreciate being able to talk to you all. And if you have any tips or ideas for people that we should be adding to our stakeholder list for the disaster program, feel free to shoot them over to me. And anybody who wants to get connected to their Main Street folks, happy to facilitate that too. Thanks.
Great. Thank you, Lindsay. And feel free to hang on if you want to and listen to
I think I will.
what's going on. So
Lindsay, can I
thanks,
post
Megan.
your email in the chat?
Yep, will do. Sure thing. Thanks.